So you've got your airbrush and you've got your air compressor, but what kind of paints are you going to use? We're going to talk about that coming up next. What's going on, guys? Welcome to V-Twin Gaming. My name is Al, and I want to talk to you about paints and how to actually use them through your airbrush. There are so many applications out there using an airbrush. I've seen them from painting or designing t-shirts to motorcycle gas tanks to helmets to miniatures, tabletops, anything plastic, metal, you name it. Tattoos, fake tattoos, of course. So there's so many different things you can use an airbrush. I've seen them on for makeup, right? Makeup artists actually use airbrushes for that. So basically, what it does is you take a paint, you add it into the bowl, and as you press down on the first action level of the airbrush, it creates the airflow. Then when you start pulling back on the airbrush, it creates the second action, which is slowly releases the paint and the air to mix. That air becomes more of a vacuum and pulls on the paint that's in the bowl or siphons it from the jar. And once the paint and the air mixes, it atomizes. Big word. So basically the paint breaks down into small particulates, wet particulates, and blast right out of the nozzle onto the subject on its way to being dry. Okay, that's the basic nuts and bolts of how the airbrush uses the paint to, spray onto the subject, whatever it is. Okay, let's talk about the actual different types of paints that are used. Right, so this one is an acrylic. This is an acrylic polymer. The one I'm holding in my hand is by Model Air from Vallejo. It's black. And basically, it's a pigment suspended in some type of medium, right? It's water-based. All acrylics are typically water-based, depending on the thickness or how thick they're solid. You can get acrylics in different ways, different modes. This one is very thinned down, specifically for airbrush. You can get some that are used for canvas painting. It's a very thicker acrylic, but as long as you thin it down to the consistency of, skim milk, it works just fine. Okay, acrylics are pretty much non-toxic. I don't recommend you eating it or drinking it. It's probably not recommended. But I can open up the cap. There are no fumes. No strong odor, nothing pungent, nothing that will irritate your lungs or irritate your nose and things like that. Very easy to clean. All you need is some detergent, water, some rubbing alcohol sometimes, soap, things like that. So very easy to maintain. And it's not harmful, right? Dries very, very fast also. So anyway, that's acrylics. Then we've got enamels. Enamels are fantastic. They're used on mostly metal objects, but I have seen them used on plastic model cars because they give a very nice hardened finish on the body of a model car. I've seen them on those. I've seen acrylics being used on, like I said earlier, the gas tanks on motorcycles or on really cool designs or a motorcycle helmet. Really neat stuff. So enamels are really neat, but they are oil-based. They don't dry as fast. They dry much slower, which means that you can't touch it, can't mess with it. You got to wait till it's dry. Now, here's the thing. Once it's dry, it's not coming off. It's on there forever. Okay? Also, enamels are flammable. Yep, you had that right. It's a petroleum-based substance. Of course, it's going to be flammable. Also, the odor can be an irritant. You can open up a bottle of enamel and, you can smell it. You can smell it a long distance away because it's very pungent, right? Don't recommend you stick it in your nose. In order to clean enamel, because it is oil-based, you need some kind of solvent, turpentine, I don't know, paint thinner, mineral spirits, things like that. That's the only thing that will really get it out. You can't use anything that's water-based because it's just that's not going to come off. Water and oil don't mix, right? So there you have it. Some people also use watercolors in an airbrush, which I don't understand. Watercolors are very similar to acrylics in a way. They're kind of like a dryish type of paint. It's a different type of pigment and a different type of suspension, if you will. But yeah, they thin it down, and some people will actually blast that through an airbrush. I'm not sure why. They dry pretty fast. They're non-toxic, but has a very weak hold. Doesn't hold as well as enamels or acrylics. So again, I think the only time that you would use that is if you have an application that just makes it look really cool. I don't know. Also, if you're going to use watercolors through your airbrush, once you complete it, make sure you coat it with either a gloss or a matte finish. That way you can harden it on the outside, because otherwise you're going to be flicking that stuff off. Okay. And then you got this stuff here. Surface primers. That's right. I use a surface primer with my airbrush all the time. Some people use a rattle can. I use my airbrush to apply it. This particular surface primer is from Vallejo. It's surface primer gray, 6.76 ounces. This will last you a long time. And it's a acrylic polyurethane, so it is a very, very good strong magnet for paint. So what is the primer? What's it for? So if you're not familiar with primer, primer basically is, and whether it's either this that you can use in your airbrush or rattle can, a primer is a paint that allows a bonding with the next level paint that you're going to put on there. Okay, it has like a type of grit or an attractant, or somehow creates a bond with whatever paint you're using on next. So it's really, really cool. Surface primer is not good when it's atomized because, again, it's almost like liquid, not liquid plastic, but it's almost like latex. Liquid latex is about the best way to describe it. Once it's atomized, you don't want to breathe any of that. That will jack you up. That's happened to me before, and not realizing what I was doing, and I went into a coughing fit and went into an asthma attack. So yeah, not good. Again, highly recommend some kind of mask or air filtration system or an exhaust system for your airbrush booth or wherever you're going to do work, or paint outside. I don't know. That's usually not ideal. But yeah, that's the surface primer. Surface primer is actually very good against corrosion. Go figure. Yeah, it's non-corrosive, and UV doesn't affect it. Who thought? Who'd have thunk? Okay. And then finally, you have oil paints. Oil paints is very interesting. I've known people use oil paints in airbrush because they can thin it. If they can thin it, and they can blast it through the airbrush, they'll make it work. Oil paints are, again, petroleum-based, which means that they take forever to dry, and they are flammable. They are also an irritant. So once atomized, you don't want that in your lungs. But they do create an effect that a lot of people find appealing on their projects. So that's great. Again, I don't have experience on that, but again, I do know, I've seen people do work with that, and they do great work. I have seen people use contrast paints through their airbrush, which are not designed for that, but it works, and they've done some beautiful, beautiful work. So it just depends on your project. What is it you're trying to accomplish? What your end goal is, right? So that makes all the difference in the world. Again, oil paints are petroleum-based and can be an irritant, and once again, has to be either thinned down with a petroleum-based thinner, such as turpentine, mineral spirits, or paint thinner, things like that. So now, once you've accomplished that and you've added your paints, that's pretty much, you're well on your way to painting anything, whether it's plastic. The applications that I use are primarily for tabletop miniatures or bus, anything plastic or resin, right? So that's what I do, and then I do the priming. I'll do the highlighting and all that other good stuff, and I use all acrylic paints. There's so many different types of acrylic, like I mentioned. Just depends on if I have the right pigment or not. Sometimes I have a color that I don't have that's already been thinned down, so I'll take some of the very thick stuff, water it down, and put it through my airbrush. So that's pretty much it. So that is it. Now that you know the type of paint that you'll be using, whether it's acrylic, enamel, or oil paints, or whatever, now you can go ahead and go to town on your models or your tanks, your cars, whatever it is that you're going to paint, your subjects and your projects, and you have an idea of what they do and how to actually use them. Again, if you are painting miniatures, then I highly recommend acrylic. Anything plastic or resin, go acrylic. It's easy to handle. You don't have to worry about the fumes, and it's easy to clean and manage. Okay. I hope this helps. I hope this video is instructional and kind of gives you something to work with. If you have any questions, please put them down in the comments below. I'd love to help out. This is what it's all about, helping out the community. If you're not a part of the channel, then please go ahead and subscribe. Don't forget to hit the notification bell and give us a like. We're going to continue this series on airbrushes. We're going to be doing a lot more. We're going to go through the entire step of seeing what kind of airbrush or paints to use to actually applying the paints to a model. And I'll cover all that in the next upcoming video. So hope you enjoyed it. You have an absolutely wonderful day. Take care, guys.